Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I'm your host, John Strazicich. Okay, so today we're in Hebrews chapter 12, and go ahead and get your Bibles and open up there. Okay, and coming to this particular slide, we'll be looking at some of the comments made by Dr. Lane, and from a literary perspective concerning chapter 12. The introduction of a new section is indicated by a shift in genre and mood. In 12:1, the writer turns from the historical recital of 11:1-40 to pastoral exhortation. The previous section was composed entirely in the indicative mood. This unit is marked by the use of the imperative and the hortatory subjunctive. In striking contrast to 11:1-40, where the exposition was carried forward almost exclusively by the use of the third person, the verbs in this section are expressed in the first or second person. The ground is laid for the transition of the historical exposition to exhortation in the epilogue to the celebration of faith under the Old Covenant. In 11:39-40, the writer comments upon the recital of past faithfulness, bringing the catalog of chapter 11 into direct relationship with his audience. The attested witnesses who died without receiving the ultimate fulfillment of the promise are juxtaposed in us, the Christian community for whom God has planned something better. In 12:1, the same two groups are mentioned for the second time. We, that is, the Christians, are to demonstrate our faithfulness, knowing that we are surrounded by the host of attested witnesses surveyed in 11:4-38. The connection between the two sections is underscored by the effective use of linking terms. And so he's referring here to marturathantes, and which here is just an aorist passive participle that was functioning adverbially and concessively. And here to marturon, here, which just is the noun form of the same word, and then we have here the use of the personal pronoun here in 11:40, to us and of us, and then in 12:1 we here. Okay, and the climactic comment in 11:30-40 provides the basis for the moving appeal addressed to the community in 12:1-3. The conclusive particle at the beginning of 12, tοιγαρουν, consequently, marks the point of transition. So we can see here, looking back here at 11:39, and these all, although having borne witness through faith, did not receive the promised, since God foresaw something better for us, in order that apart from us they might not be made perfect. And then it goes straight on into chapter 12, and then it begins with therefore also we. And so then we can see the connection here that our author here, these linking terms here, are going to set up the connection between how the last chapter ended in the last two verses there, 39 and 40, how it was setting up for the transition here to be made in 12:1. Okay, and I'm coming to this particular slide. Just as we saw in the last slide, where Lane was talking about the transition from the historical recital of chapter 11 into the hortatory subjunctive and imperative parenesis of the present chapter. So David De Silva here is going to help set us up more in terms of the historical, cultural background to some of the imagery offered in this particular chapter. The exhortation is couched in terms of athletic imagery, in which the addressee's Christian experience is cast as a race, the course of which is laid out ahead of them, ostensibly by God. Their performance in this race is being witnessed not merely by a crowd of flaccid spectators, but by the assembly of those who have themselves run the race before them and have run it well. They are therefore called to run with endurance, that is, persevering in the face of the pains and fatigue. A metaphor does not merely stand for or represent the reality it replaces. It also interprets that reality, bringing it into a new perspective gained from setting it in the light of some other known reality. As observed above, the points of connection between athletic competition and the experience of social and physical deprivation were widely recognized by authors writing from a subcultural, countercultural location, i.e. Judaism, Cynic culture, Stoic, and the like. In both the race or contest and membership in an essentially voluntary group, a person willingly chose to endure physical discomfort, to submit to the reproaches of a trainer, to curb luxury, and to turn aside from many delights enjoyed by the non-athlete or the fully participating member of the dominant culture. The metaphor of athletic competition, however, also brings something to the experience of the minority culture. It provides the recipient of society's censure and hostility an essential reorientation to that experience, turning a victim into a competitor and raising his or her dignity correspondingly. Athletic imagery turns debilitating experiences into endurable ones, since there is now the prospect of victory, even if that victory is to be attained not by turning the tables on opponents, but by merely enduring till the end of the contest. In the end, victory is attained insofar as the one suffering external assaults, i.e. censure, physical violence, and the like, does not allow them to alter his internal convictions and commitments to do what he or she knows to be just and right. For the author of Hebrews, this means persevering in a lifestyle that manifests gratitude to the divine benefactor and to Jesus, the broker of that relationship. In short, maintaining a just response to God in view of prior gifts and future benefactions already promised. Okay, so as De Silva has said here, that we're going to see in this chapter many different images that the author uses as a metaphor to for us to reflect upon our Christian existence in the present world, and it's much like what the athletes did of the imperial age of Roman rule, and we'll see that as we move on. Okay, and coming to this particular slide, what we typically do is offer a translation, and then we will present some type of structure. And beginning here in 12:1 with tοιγαρun, therefore, since we also have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, putting off every weight and the easily besetting sin, let us run with patience the race which is set before us, looking away to Jesus, the author and finisher of faith, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross by despising the shame, has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider the one who has endured such hostility against himself by sinners, in order that you do not become weary, with the result of becoming exhausted in your souls. Okay, so that's our translation here of the text. And then coming here to verses 1 to 3, we will see that it is actually part of a larger unit that begins in 12:1, and it goes all the way to verse 13. And this is the hortatory paranesis for the call to run life's race with endurance. So that's the larger unit that this particular text here is involved with. But anyhow, so we're just looking at the initial unit of this larger section here of 12 that covers from 12:1 to 13. And we're going to see here that verses 1 to 3 is going to basically break down into three particular shorter units. And we'll look here in verses 1 to 2a, the hortatory call to run the race. And then when we come here to 2b, picking up here with the relative clause that offers an expansive christological paradigm for faith endurance, that by looking to Christ, that's going to take up the rest of 2b. And then we have a concluding basis, purpose, and result statements offered here in verse 3, which rounds out the unit. And we can see here that it begins here in 3 with a basis statement, gar, and then we have a purpose clause here, and then we also have this adverbial participle functioning as results here. And so we'll look at some of this diagrammatically, but this here pretty much breaks down our unit into its individual parts. And you can see here that that I've broken this down very, very carefully here, especially in verses 1 to 2a here. And so it begins with an inferential, transitional, deduction, therefore, and then we have this causal clause here of this, the causal use of this adverbial εχοντες here is going to be this causal clause, and then probably a temporal clause, but some take it as also maybe some type of I don't know, some type of imperatival force, picking up here the hortatory subjunctive of trechomen. And some translations are going to say here, let us, put off here for αποθεμενοι here. So we'll look here, but I'm looking at it as a temporally here, that this is preparatory initial things that need to be done before we come to let us run. So this is preparatory. So I'm looking at this more in terms of temporal, so antecedent to the to this particular main verb here, our hortatory subjunctive. So there's some prerequisite things that we have to do, taking stock here causally, that since we have this great cloud of witnesses, and then also putting off every encumbrance and easily besetting sin. And now you're ready to run the race with the hortatory subjunctive. And then after the race has begun, we're looking away to Jesus, the author and finisher of the faith, as we begin to run. So our focus then is on Christ, who that picks up here in this expansive relative clause, showing us how he suffered and endured by looking ahead with joy to the to what was that lied ahead of this difficult thing called the cross, his death that he had to suffer. And so all this is a big metaphor for our life here, that we have to endure life's struggles, and so it's all set to the imagery here of the Olympic Games as they were celebrated in the ancient world. So such is what the author has done, and then it concludes here then with this final basis clause here, that where the author enjoins his audience here then to consider Christ, who has endured such contradiction or such controversy by sinners against himself, and here's the purpose of that, so that they don't, down here the purpose here in 3b alpha is so that they do not become weary, resulting in the exhaustion of their souls here, and so this here is this ekluamenoi here becomes this adverbial participle of results here, resulting in fainting of one's soul. Okay, so this looks at pretty much the structure, and it gives you some little points here. We've got the prerequisites, and then we've got the call, additional parenesis, how to finish the race after one's already begun running it here, and then we, these relative clauses here then are expansive, tissues of narrativity that expand on this Christological paradigm for faith's endurance. Okay, so we look at this, and this all pretty much, you just follow the text, and then what the point of this structure is so that you can understand the flow of the text, and you can identify, just about every single concept that the author wanted to pick up on and articulate as he was moving through this section. And so this is what this whole exercise here is, and this is really the heart of exegesis. It's understanding our clauses, and so structural analysis and diagrammatical analysis really kind of go hand in glove, and show us what the mechanics of the text are, what the main points are here, and then we have these prerequisites and additional items here, and then expansive relative clause, and then our concluding basis, purpose, and result statements. Okay, now coming here to this particular slide, we'll begin to look at things diagrammatically, and we'll start up here with our first word here, that's placed on stilts because it lies outside of the sentence. And tοιγαρουν here functions as a coordinating conjunction of inference. That just means that we would translate this therefore. So it's drawing a conclusion or a summation to what was just said, and basically, summing up all of the theological cache that our author had paraded for us in this historical, recitation passage that we saw in chapter 11 of all of the, what we'd call the Hall of Faith people from the Old Testament, and so then he's drawing an inference from that, and when we look here at our baseline text, when we look here at our verb, this cohortative trechomen. So this is a present active subjunctive. So this here is, this, we would translate this, let us run. So now he's addressing, along with himself, and his audience. So so this is the beginning of the paranesis here, and we had talked about before that our first unit really goes from 12:1 to 13, and then we're just looking here at the introductory unit of this paranesis here, of this call to run. So this is what it is. This is this cohortative, or this hortatory language here is the call to run. And our author has been fond of using the present active subjunctive here in these calls for the congregation. Then he's addressing them directly, with himself included. Okay, so we have here as our subject hemes, us. Okay, so we have the personal pronoun here, us, and let us run. And then we have here agona here, from agon, which is let us run the race. So it means competition, contest, or race. The context, remember, meaning's always context driven here. So how do we translate this? Let us run the contest, let us run the race. So the race here is going to fit a little better than contest. And so that is why context is king, and meaning is always context driven. So that you'll see here that this particular word here is going to be translated race, because it's lining up here with our main verb. Okay, and then we have kai here, and this is being used adjunctively here, so it's also, we're translating this also. And then what we need to notice here is that we're going to have three adverbial uses of the participle, and they're all different. The first one has a causal meaning to it, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us. And then when we come here to apothemenoi here, it is either going to, translations, there's a lot of translations that want to place this as a attendant circumstance, let us. So it's going to be mirroring here, trechomen here. And so it can take on that. It can take on definitely the imperative, because that is the coloring of a cohort of the hortatory subjunctive here, has an imperatival force. Or we could look at this as temporal, as in terms of a prerequisite. Putting off could be a good translation. Having put off, taking up some of the temporal things. Because what we're looking at here is the way that we attack this particular verse here in 12:1 to 2a, is that we're first going to the eccontes here. We're going to translate this particular adverbial participle first, and then we're going to then drop down here to this one, apothemenoi here, and that is going to be translated here, second, and then we're going to come in here, and we're going to then introduce our main verb here, third, and then fourthly, we're going to come down here and pick up our third adverbial participle here, and this is going to be one of means. We're going to translate here aforao here, aforωντες here. This is just a present participle active, and we're going to translate this by means here. I think that's the best. So where we're going to have some play here of as far as interpretation, a lot of viable translations are going to have attendant circumstances here for apothemenoi, which was going to be translated "let us put off," or just put off, in as more of an imperatival force. That has to be there. And then if we look at it temporally, that this is something this is a prerequisite. Before we run, we have to put off any encumbrance or any some type of circumstantial sin here that's going to stand about us and hinder our movement. That has to be removed. So understanding the temporal factor here, just by translating it having put off, would suffice here for translating this here temporally as something that needs to be done before we introduce trechomen here, before we actually begin to run. Okay, so the causal here, let's come back up here to εχοντες here. So let's go back and retrace our steps. Therefore, since we also have so great a cloud of witnesses lying about us or surrounding us here. So this particular, participle here, we're going to look at this here as an adjectival participle modifying nephos. Now, nephos here is related to nephele here, which is the normal word for cloud, but nephos means more of a cloud mass. So it's being used metaphorically here. Therefore, since having so great a cloud of witnesses, so this is, obviously going to refer here, looking back at chapter 11, the cloud of witnesses is Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Barak, Jephthah, Samson, David, Samuel, and the prophets, and so on and so forth. So all of these heroes of the faith that our author, had brought up in the, going back in the last chapter, that now consists of this nephos, this cloud mass. Since we have this big cloud mass of all these people, these heroes of the faith, who have stood the test of time, okay, and have become, witnesses for the faith, that this now becomes a source of encouragement for us, since we have those who have already gone before us. So that is the very first thing here that is being put forward by our author, is the causal use of εχοντες. And notice here, this is a present tense, and then he goes to an aorist middle here, and then having put off, every encumbrance or every weight and the easily distracting sin, or the sin which stands about or besets, or is it basically it's from periistemi, which means to stand around, and then you put on here. So this is going to be used here easily. So easily, the sin which easily stands about us or besets us, or it's something surrounding us. So if there's some type of encumbrance here that we have to put off. So looking here at the athletic metaphor here that our author has taken up here, by placing us in this race, that remember in the games of the ancient world, they ran without clothes. So they have to take off all their garments and everything, and clothing. Thank God we don't run in the nude today, but they did back then. So you can understand how certain garments and clothing is going to be an encumbrance, and that you can't run a race in long pants, or in a dress or high heels or something. So then we have to take all this stuff metaphorically, that in our race that we're in of faith, that we're in this faith race of life, where we have all types of sins that are that are enticing us, or impediments that you really can't run a race with a jacket on. Okay, so there's certain things that we take metaphorically, that in life is running the race of Christianity, that we can't be bogged down with things that are going to hinder our walk of faith, our race of faith in life. We have to get rid of certain things in order for us to properly maintain our Christian witness. Okay, so we just have to take away everything that is a temptation to us. So basically, if you look at the 3 G's, okay, we got gold, girls, and glory. Okay, so the 3 G's, these are the 3 things that trip up everybody here in life. So these are the 3 things that are just, that should be obvious to all, that these are going to present some type of impediment or some easily distracting sin. Okay, and remember the 4 soils, that we have weeds. Life, we have to weed our own garden. Okay, and then we had the rocky soil. Okay, so we, in order for our roots to go down, we have to remove impediments, so that in our soil, so that we can germinate our seed of faith, so that it will have an anchor in the ground, and it won't get clogged up by surface rocks, so that the root can never break down below it. So there's all these these impediments here that are in our way in the race of life of faith, and then we have the whole cloud of witnesses: Abel and Enoch, Noah and Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab. So there's all these things. Rahab had a lot of impediments here. She was a whore. So she had to throw everything away in order to grab onto her faith, and so that she has repented from her sins and is now living by faith, and that's what she did, and that's what they all did. Samson had to do the same thing, okay, and David did, and Barak, and so they all overcame everyone has these obstacles and these sins, so we all have to put them off, and we have to always do we have to check ourselves and examine ourselves so that none of this stuff here is affecting our walk of faith and or our race of faith. So let's look at what we've done here. Therefore, since we also have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, and we can translate as, let us put off, every weight and besetting sin, and then let us run the race which is set before us. Okay, so here we have here our hortatory subjunctive here, this present active subjunctive here of trechomen here. Let us run. So now that we have taken stock of of all of this great cloud of witnesses that our author has created from chapter 11, that's all fresh in our minds, that we can see the hall of faithers, up on this cloud, that these are the witnesses that have come through the struggles and trials of life triumphantly. So we have them as a source of encouragement. And then now he's called upon us then to let us remove every impediment and the sin that easily distracts us or hems us in, so to speak. And then let us run the race which is set before us. So this is the life that that God has set before us, and so now we're able to run. So why? We have great encouragement from the past, heroes of faith, and we're getting rid of these impediments. Okay, so now we can run the race. So now that we've started, so now we're coming down here then to our third adverbial participle from aforao here, and then we have this present tense aforωντες here. So this is just a present active participle here. So this is looking away to. So we have this prepositional phrase here, looking away to Jesus. All right. So that would, and then we have these appositives here. We have this term that we've had earlier, archegos here, and then we have this term here that our author may have coined himself, teleotes here. So we have looking away to Jesus and the author and finisher of faith. Okay, so we're looking away to Jesus, the author and finisher of faith. So we've seen archegos here, and so in the way that the Greek language works here, arche here means beginning, and then tel here is or any noun or verb formed from this is going to then talk about completion or end. So here we have the beginning and the end. So Christ is here. He is the originator, the founder the originator of faith, and then he is the completer, the finisher. He's the one who brings it to perfection. So he's the finisher or the completer of faith here. So some people have looked at this archegos here as pioneer here. So that would be good. That would be talking about about first things. So Christ is the first to go and the first to lead. So he's the pioneer. He's the founder. He's the initiator, the originator. So this is what archegos here would mean. So we're looking away to Jesus, and so he is our source, right? He's the origin of our faith, and he's the completer of our faith, the beginning and the end of faith. So that's who we're looking away to. So he's talked here about the prerequisites of what we have to do before we run with the causal use of the adverbial participle. And here with this, it's either temporal or attendant circumstance or some type of, which would include some imperatival use here. Put off. And so we have to put off these impediments and easily distracting sins, and now we're ready to run the race. And now that we're running, now we're focusing. When we're running, we're looking away to Jesus. Why? Because he is the archegos, the teleotes. He is the founder, and he is the finisher of the faith. Okay, so that pretty much, I think that really breaks down the sentence, and it's important to look at this diagrammatically. These, with Greek, really these participles are really at the core of everything here. It's one of the biggest parts of understanding, or diagramming here, and these adverbial participles are really at the core, because they have different nuances, and you have to look at the main verb and see how they're modifying it, and get the feel for it. So we get the sense that this is causal, this could be attendant circumstance, it could be temporal. And then looking down here, by looking away. So this is how this particular adverbial participle is functioning, by looking away. So it's the means, of how it's coloring trichomen here. We're running by means of looking away to Jesus. So this is how we're going to get the job done. Okay. That pretty much sums up what we're doing here in this particular slide. Okay, now coming here to this particular slide, we are going to look at some of the statements made by Attridge here, concerning the material we just covered. In running their race, the addressees are to look toward aforωντες, a model, the festive designation of Jesus as faith's archegon and teleotein, is condensed and evocative. The first term appeared earlier in a vivid image of Jesus' salvific activity in 2:10. The other context and the etymology play suggested that Christ was presented as the leader or forerunner of the children being brought to glory. The racing metaphor in this pericope suggests that the archegos has similar functions in this verse. He is the leader of the one who runs faith's race. The juxtaposition with teleotes, however, with its obvious play on arche and tel here, stems, suggests that archegos also carries connotations of founder or initiator. Hence, Christ's status as faith's initiator is intimately bound up with his function as faith's perfecter, or finisher. The unusual term teleotes, perfecter, recalls the complex theme of perfection in Hebrews. Here, however, it is neither Christ himself nor his followers that are perfected, but the faith that both share. His perfecting activity consists first in the creation through his death and exaltation of a new possibility of access to God. 10:19, in a new covenantal relationship. Of equal importance is the fact that he provides a perfectly adequate model of what life under that covenant involves. Thus, faith, pistis, that Christ inaugurates and brings to perfect expression is not the content of Christian belief, but the fidelity and trust that he himself exhibited in a fully adequate way that his followers are called upon to share and mimic. So this here, this is just reinforcing some of the ideas here of what our kagos here and teleotes here mean, in that he's the founder, the initiator, and he is the finisher, the one who brings our faith to completion. So, because teleotes has the idea of bringing something to maturity or bringing something to its logical end, its mature end. So it's bringing something to its perfection or its to a finish. So he puts the finishing touches on everything. And so that's who we're to look away to as we're running the race of faith. Okay, and then coming here to this slide, we're just looking at, this is just an artist's rendition of what Rome would have looked like in the first century. Here's the Colosseum. This here is the Circus Maximus. So these are places where, races could have, would have been conducted in maybe short races, or this is where they ended or began. And anyhow, so this just shows us that we have this great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. So looking here, like in the stands here of these massive amphitheaters that the Romans built for the games, these are some of the images that would come to mind. And here's just another reminder here of this is the amphitheater at Ephesus here, and this would just go to show us here that we would have this great cloud of witnesses that would surround us here as we're in life's face. So this is probably the imagery here of the stands here, that the saints that have gone home to glory, they would be called upon here as he was looking here and reminiscing over the stadium, how he'd be looking up, and then it would be natural for our author to place all of the great Hall of Famers of faith, from Abel down to David and Samuel here, up on the clouds here, that they are cheering us on, and that they are the source of encouragement for us to run the race. Okay, now coming here to this particular slide, we're moving here into the relative clause here of to be with has, and this is going to refer back to Jezun here previously. That's what this is going to come down to. Who, so it's talking about Jesus. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross by despising the shame, and he has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So this is a complex sentence here, compound sentence here, and so we have two baselines here with two verbs here, and it shows us, remember that the relative clauses typically, add the tissue of narrativity to extend some more thoughts here that our author wanted to place before us, and he does so here, who for the joy set before him. So he endured the cross. So so this is how we have to endure the trials of life that we go through. And Christ had the ultimate trial of martyrdom and the cross. And so what Christ did was he looked forward to the joy that he would accomplish by bringing many sons to glory. Okay, so it was the cross. That was, that's why he told Peter to get behind me, Satan. You mind the things of men, not the things of God. So and Christ had to always have in front of him the goal of what his ministry was down here, was to become a Melchizedekian priest, that lived forever, and made the final sacrifice for our sins and everyone else's sins, and that he, and as a result, he sat down. Okay, priests don't really sit down; they're standing up, constantly performing sacrifices. But Christ, once for all sacrifice, he sat down. Okay, so his priestly role that he performed here on the cross, okay, that he endured this, and he was looking forward to the joy that he would spend with us, okay, and all of the people of faith, I guess the resurrection's going to begin with Abel, not Adam, because Abel died first. He was the first human to die. So he will be the very first one to resurrect, along with Enoch and Noah and Abraham and Sarah and Isaac, and all the way down through the whole list, the whole cloud of witnesses there. He endured the cross for their sake and ours, okay, and that he did this by despising the shame. So, the cross, having, you're stripped and you're thrown on this wooden cross beams, and you're nailed to it, and obviously this was very painful. So he endured this by looking ahead to the where he would be the archegos, the one who would lead many sons to glory. And then, having done so, then he sat down here at the right hand of God. Now he's the vice regent, and he's ruling and reigning with God right now, and he will continue to do so until all enemies are put underneath his feet. And that will then take place at the second coming and the millennium, and then at the end of the millennium, then Christ will deliver up the kingdom to God the Father. But for now, here he's seated here, and he is co-regent with God, ruling from heaven, and soon to return. Okay, now coming here to this particular slide, we're going to pick up here on some of the comments made here by David Allen. He makes some good, astute observations here. The final phrase in verse 2 is significant for several reasons. First, the author places the verb sat down at the end of the clause for emphasis. That's true. Second, the verb is in the perfect tense, emphasizing the permanence of the enthronement and exaltation of Christ. Third, the author here is alluding to the key Old Testament passage for the entire epistle, that is Psalm 110. The Greek reads literally, "At the right of the throne of God is seated." This can be taken to mean that he sat on the throne at God's right hand. Greenlee observed that it may mean seated on a different seat from God's throne, located at the right side of God's throne. So we'll be looking at Christ here as functioning in his co-regency, as co-regent king here, as the Son. This paragraph is closely connected with Hebrews 11 and is the culmination of the author's argument that his readers should press on with endurance by faith, their eyes focused on Jesus as their supreme example. Unlike the heroes and heroines of faith mentioned in Hebrews 11, Jesus'
able to strengthen his followers to endure, because he is the one who sits at the right hand of the throne of God and awaits their cry for help. So I thought that these comments here by Alan were really good, and is basically representative. He's got a very good commentary. Even though I have said a few things at different times, that were very pertinent to the book of Hebrews in these warning passages. But the book of Hebrews is not primarily about the warning passages. It's about these kind of passages here, where it's offering encouragement to us as believers. And so David excels here and does an excellent job.
All right, now coming here to verse 3 here, we will let's just do a walkthrough here of a translation. For consider the one who has endured such opposition against himself by sinners, in order that you may not become weary with the result of becoming exhausted in your souls. Okay, so we can see here that we have a basis clause, we have a hint of purpose clause, and then this adverbial participle will interpret as a resultant clause here. So it's if they were to give out here and become weary, then it would result here in the fainting of their souls. So this is the reason for we have this command here for give careful reason, give careful deliberation to what? To and then we have this substantival use of the accusative here. It's the object of analogisastha here. So we put it on stilts, and then this substantival use here of the participle of hupomeno here. This is the perfect. It's also going to have a direct object here, which is antilogia here, which is opposition or verbal opposition. But looking at the whole Christ event, I think opposition is going to be because it becomes more than just speech. It becomes a physical opposition of him being put to death. So we're to give careful deliberation here to the one who has endured such opposition against himself by sinners. Okay, so by us considering Jesus, what he went through, that what we're going through down here, is not necessarily going to be this so great of a contest that he went through. Okay, so Christ is our supreme example here, and so we can endure whatever we have to down here on earth, and that we are going to be stretched. Believe me, faith here, the life of faith is not easy. We may have to end up being, becoming martyrs just like Christ was. But we can't lose, we can't let our soul go. So we cannot become weary with the result, of becoming exhausted in our souls. So we have to keep our faith intact in our souls, and we do that by looking to Jesus and looking at what he endured. And so since he did that, he will give us the strength then to overcome our temptations and the trials and everything that comes at us in life. Okay, so this is the life of faith. Faith has great things that that we overcome, and then faith has to sacrifice in order then to be purified. So the sacrifices of faith is enduring temptations, and the victories of faith is overcoming opposition, and that can be done in many different ways. We saw all of the ways in which the saints of the Old Testament overcame. The women had their dead brought back to life through faith, right? By faith Abraham got a son, right? So there's everything from from overcoming kings in battle, literal, all kinds of, whatever opposition that can come, faith is able, at times to triumph. And then at other times, God's looking at our faith that we have to sacrifice, ourselves and endure and pick up the cross and follow Him. So that is the life of the Christian. It's not all cotton candy, all right? Life of faith is difficult, and we do not want to become weary in giving out in our souls. We want to preserve by our faith and be encouraged by the cloud of witnesses that have gone before us, okay? As we saw that they're back there in verse 1. So we should be encouraged here. Jesus overcame. Our faith will overcome the world, and greater is He that's in us than he that is in the world. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this particular session today of biblical theology, exegesis, and hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you for all those who have recently been joining. And please begin to make some comments here. I'm not getting too many comments. Subscribe, share, and like. And I'm just, basically what I'm doing here, folks, is, teaching, the old classes that I used to teach here, and I'm just putting them online for your benefit, and hopefully, whatever I can contribute to, to interpreting the text can help you in your stewarding of your faith.